Kathleen. How's it
Yeah.
going?
Good, Emery. How are you?
Good. Happy we could sit down. You're a busy lady these days. A lot going on, and you're running for a very important position. So we wanted to sit down and just kind of let people know. Well, I wanted to let them know how amazing you are. You're quite humble. So
You're too
just,
kind.
let's just get into the nitty gritty. What have you been up to?
It's been crazy. So I'm running for the Court of Appeals, and because of the way the Court of Appeals is structured, there's 4 different districts, and I'm in District 3. So I have 17 counties of people I'm trying to reach and talk to about the Court of Appeals and how important it is for people to get out and vote this November.
So you are a sitting judge now, and you have been for quite some time. You're in Kent County, which is part of that District 3, but it really is a large geographical district.
It's huge. It goes from Ludington down to Berrien, up in over Kalamazoo to Washtenaw, but comes under Ingham and then kind of stair steps back up to Mason. So, like I said, 17 counties, 2.8 million people. It's way too many people to knock on doors. And believe it or not, way too many people to put out lots of yard signs. So we're trying all different ways, in person, social media, to reach the voters so they can make an informed decision.
But right now, you're most well known in Kent County, where you're working, and you have for quite some time in the family court. Tell people about the work that you're doing there and have done for
Sure.
decades.
Yes. I was appointed to the bench in 2000, the first woman ever elected or appointed to the circuit court in Kent County. So it took quite a while for us to get there.
And you were
Um,
young too.
yes, I was. It's been 22 plus years now, and so it was fabulous. A great opportunity for me. I was assigned to the family division of the circuit court and have been there ever since. So we do divorce, custody, child support, paternity, abuse and neglect, termination of parental rights, juvenile delinquency, PPOs, adoptions. And so it's a huge gamut of the court. We handle 75% of everybody who comes into the courthouse to see the circuit court come to see the family division in one of those areas. And so it's really, really important work. I've kind of become an expert in the field of family law, if you want to say that. Across the state, I've done many presentations, been involved in a lot of different things right now, involved in a medically fragile kids in foster care project. So it's been a wonderful experience. I've met a lot of people.
And before then, it was quite a journey. You don't just become the first female judge in that area out of nowhere. You actually started in the appellate court.
I did. I started in private practice, first in Lansing and then in Grand Rapids. And then I joined the Court of Appeals in their pre-hearing division. Pre-hearing is the people who take all the transcripts and the cases and the briefs that have come up from the circuit court on appeal or the probate court. And they kind of summarize everything to present it to the judges. I did that for a few years. And then I became the judicial counsel for Judge Jane Markey on the Court of Appeals. She got elected and started in 1995. And I did that for 5 years. And really was involved in the nitty gritty of the everyday work of the Court of Appeals. And then in 2000, I was then appointed and came to the circuit court. So really kind of a different background, but it made me, I think, really well prepared, especially having the background of knowing what the Court of Appeals is looking for in the circuit court judges and the work that we do. And so I think that's really helped to make me a better judge.
And unlike the Court of Appeals, you've been reelected throughout this entire time. So you've been doing a good job.
Yes. So the people in Kent County have reelected me 5 times. So hopefully they'll get a 6th opportunity to do that, but to move on to the Court of Appeals.
So outside of work, you are a Spartan, but we joke in our family, we kind of have all the bases covered. Your husband went to U of M. I, of course, went to Central. You got some Ohio State in there, or the Ohio State, I should say, without getting trouble, right?
Yes. And I went to Illinois for law school. So we've got everything pretty much covered in a big chunk of the Big Ten and at least in the Midwest. So.
And you always wanted to be an advocate for people. You wanted to be a lawyer from a very young age.
Mm-hmm. I tell people I got started in the law because of sea monkeys. And that comes from when I was really young. We get comic books, and on the very back of the comic books would have these ads for sea monkeys. And they had little crowns on, little castle, swimming around in the water. So I sent my $3.75 in, whatever it was. And they sent me back brine shrimp. And I'm like, these are not sea monkeys. And so I started writing letters to the company saying, you are ripping off children all over the country by telling them these are sea monkeys, and they are not. They are brine shrimp. Stop, falsely advertising. And that was like my first foray into, being a consumer advocate. That's one of the things that really kind of got me pumped about, look at, people are ripping off people and I can do something about it. So I always tell people sea monkeys are what kind of got me started in the law.
And you haven't stopped. Look where we are now.
True.
In the meantime, you've done some things behind the scenes. You have a beautiful family. Your husband is well educated as well. You guys have that in common. That's how you met.
Yeah.
And then you started this beautiful family.
We started off, our first daughter, Anna, as you know, was born with a really rare metabolic illness. She died in my arms on Thanksgiving Day of 2000. So she was with us for only about 1 year, 8 months, 15 days, 1 hour and 44 minutes. And we learned so much through her about the grace and that people can provide to you, the help that is there if you ask for it. And then we were fortunate enough to be blessed with 3 other children who are all very healthy, who are almost 20 and 18 and 14. So we are super, super busy. And we also have a dog, Tilly. And so, yeah, it's good. We have a good thing going. I was able to kind of survive the loss of my first child through my job, because I could come to work every day and would think for 14 or 16 hours a day, I'd be thinking about other families and their children. And even in divorce cases, how do we make it best for the kids? How do we do something that's right for them? What's in their best interest? That term is always used when we're deciding cases for kids and in divorce and custody cases. And it was wonderful because it gave me the opportunity to pour myself into all of that. When I do my child abuse cases and abuse and neglect cases, and lots of those families have lost children. And I had the opportunity to kind of share with them and try to urge them in to get into grief counseling, to deal with that, to understand that it doesn't have to define them, but that child will always have a place in their heart and their home, and that they can kind of not forget, but find a way to have a life that's fulfilling, even after the loss. And I think that kind of makes us seem not so, you're that judge up there with that black robe on, but we're human beings. We have loss, we have grief, and we have experiences like that kind of make us more human, perhaps. When I feel like there's a connection to be made there, and a parent to be comforted, or a parent who needs to be encouraged, I'll talk about that. I have children who have brain chemistry issues. Everything I've learned about how the brain works and neurology and staying out of your amygdala and what happens when kids are angry, and how that affects the brain, and how drugs impact the brain development, and the 3 neurotransmitters that we have in our brains. I talk to people about that all the time. People who come into my court like, okay, she's going to give the 3 buckets analogy now about dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin in our brains, and how they work and what happens to them. And so all those experiences, I try to take with me to the bench and share them with people, because I think that kind of information you need to share. It helps people. It helps them understand. I think they see you coming from a place of authenticity. It's human connection. I'm in the business of human connection, and I'm in the business of being a professional listener, because most of the time I'm in court, I'm listening. Once I do the rights and we take the plea, like in a delinquency case or something else like that, in a child protective case, or we're doing what I have to do in the divorce case, I'm listening and I'm taking notes, and I'm trying to piece the puzzle together to try to figure out what's going to be best for this family and these children.
And you've also brought therapy dogs into the courtroom. I love that as well, to help the children in particular cope with, which is probably a pretty tough situation the day that they have to go into court, right?
Absolutely. West Michigan Therapy Dogs has partnered with us and prosecutor Chris Becker to come into the courthouse. When Anna was in the hospital, we always wanted to bring our Bernese Mountain Dogs up to see her, but it wasn't permitted. In the last 20 years, West Michigan Therapy Dogs has become an incorporated animal assisted therapy group. So it's just people from all over the community who have great dogs, who love people and love kids. You can be going to the Children's Hospital where Rosie, my burner, and I went to. You can be going to the Veterans Home, nursing homes. We go to Davenport and Aquinas during exam time, all over the place. And we just take our dogs in to help people calm down, give them security and a good feeling. So when we had the opportunity to do this, it was for the courthouse therapy dog program. We have kids who are the victims of crime or vulnerable adults who are the victims of crime. And they come in to have to meet with prosecutors for the probable cause conferences and things like that. And it's embarrassing to them. They don't want to talk to anybody about these sorts of things that have happened to them. They've been sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, and it's very difficult for them. So we have the teams come in and meet with them in the victim witness unit, and they just spend time with them. The kids and the families get to pet the dogs, take them for little walks around the courtroom or the courthouse. They play Yahtzee with them. They do fun things with them, and it keeps them out of their amygdala and here in this prefrontal cortex part of their brain. And it provides that comfort. There's a lot of empirical studies showing that when you're petting a dog, it keeps your blood pressure lower and keeps you nice and calm. So we have the dogs that meet with the kids ahead of time, and they get a chance to also go into the courtrooms. So if the children have to testify, the dogs can come right into the courtrooms with them. We have statutes that permit courtroom therapy dogs. We have jury instructions that permit courtroom therapy dogs, both in civil and criminal cases. So it really is a way to protect these children from being re-traumatized, because it is so traumatic for them to go through the experience and then have to relive it over and over again and talk about it over and over again. So the dogs are either sitting in a chair or just sitting right next to the kids while they're testifying. The handlers are in a special chair on the floor so the jury doesn't notice them. And it gives that kids that sense of protection and that sense of calm. So then they can tell their stories, because one of the worst things to happen is the kids go through this trauma and then they have no way to kind of bring about justice for themselves because they can't tell their story. So it's been a wonderful program. The handlers say it's fabulous. The people who are the victims and their families, they can't say enough about how wonderful it is. And it's just been a real privilege to be able to bring this program to Kent County.
And that's just a small sample of what you've done during your time in Kent County. People might not know what the Court of Appeals is and how you can take your experience and your education and like what that means for the average Michigander. So explain to us what the Court of Appeals is.
Sure. So I tell people when I was going around and getting 8,400 people to sign my petitions to show up on the ballot, I would mention them that I'm running for the Court of Appeals, and they would just have this kind of like, heard of it, don't know how it works kind of look. So I'd explain that picture me as the referee on the field with the striped shirt, running up and down for 22 years, making the call on divorce, custody, paternity, child support, all the rest of those juvenile delinquency, termination of parental rights cases. And the Court of Appeals are in the instant replay booth. All 25 of them, they sit up there in panels of 3. And they look at the law, they look at the case, and then they affirm the ruling on the field, or they reverse the ruling on the field, tell me, go back and do it again. And so right now, one of the judges has been up there since 1982. He has to retire. We are the only branch that is term limited as far as being on the ballot. So once you turn 70, you cannot be on the ballot to be a judge. So he has to retire, Dave Sawyer. And there's an opening, and there hasn't been another opening in our district, District 3, for the Court of Appeals, I think since 1995, around there, an open seat. Because usually if there's an opening, the governor will appoint if it's in the middle of the term. So that's the opportunity that we have. What I tell people is that even though I'm going to be elected, hopefully, from District 3, there's 4 districts total for the state. That's only to get the judges onto the Court of Appeals. So we don't want all the Court of Appeals judges coming from like the centers of population, right? That's why we split it up into Wayne to Kalamazoo. That's 1. A couple of 3 counties is 2 over in the Detroit area. We're District 3, and then Ingham and everything else, I believe, is District 4. And so it's just a way to kind of spread representation from across the state of Michigan on the Court of Appeals. So they are what's also considered the intermediate appellate court. So everything that comes up from the courts, circuit, probate, all the rest of that goes up to the Court of Appeals. They have to hear all of our appeals. But then if you want to appeal from the Court of Appeals, you have to ask permission, essentially get an application for leave to appeal up to the Michigan Supreme Court. And then they're our top appellate court in the state.
So when people are voting, you're the person that they want there in case they get into a situation where they need another level of defense. If something happens, if there's a ruling, like I was saying, we see on Dateline or other shows, people are more familiar with, our last chance is the Court of Appeals. You need someone who knows what they're doing. And a lot of family cases, what your experience is, and comes to the Court of Appeals.
Yes, about 20% of the cases that come before the Court of Appeals are family law cases. And so lots of times it's the nuances that get missed. I tell people that there was a case several years ago where the Court of Appeals made a decision that I don't think they intended the consequences of that decision. There's a 100-mile rule. So once somebody files for divorce, that they can't move more than 100 miles away from the child's residence. I believe, according to the legislative history, it's so kids don't have to travel that far between one parent and the other. And it makes sense. So for the longest time, people would file motions to move a distance away, and they would give me the map quest that would show they're moving like 97 miles away or that sort of thing. And then the Court of Appeals came out with a decision when it went up on appeal to determine what is that 100 miles? How is it calculated? And the Court of Appeals decided that, well, in contract cases, we use as the crow flies. And so now it's 100 miles as the crow flies. And so you could live in Charlevoix and the other parent could move to Garden City in the UP, and it's across the lake. It's less than 100 miles, but it's not less than 100 miles for the poor child who now has to travel up and over the bridge and then all the way over to Garden City. So it's those sorts of things. And that's just the one example that I give to people. So to try to make it real. But I'm hoping that my wealth of experience in these family law areas can really kind of help to inform to some decision making, and sometimes just bring some reality to it, and help people to drill down through, okay, here's some of the consequences that are going to be coming about from the decisions that are coming through the court.
It's one of those things that people might not think about until it really impacts them. And then we've seen, higher court cases that have been big impacts lately, and people are starting to rethink who's in charge of what. And this is the opportunity to vote. When are people voting?
November 8th.
November 8th.
Yep. Make sure that when you're done with the front of the ballot, you flip over, because that's going to be all the nonpartisan races and the proposals. I believe all 3 proposals will be on there after the judges. So you'll be voting for Michigan Supreme Court justices, for Court of Appeals judges, and then all of your local judicial races.
And tell me about your opponent.
His name is Judge Ray Vogt. He is a district court judge from Ionia County. So district court handles everything under $25,000. They handle small claims. They handle landlord-tenant eviction cases. They do all of our criminal prelim hearings, so our probable cause conferences and things like that. They're the ones who are probable cause hearings. They're the ones who are determining whether or not there's probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed and probable cause to believe that this defendant is the person who committed that crime. And once they make those findings, then the cases come up to circuit court, where I am. So in circuit court, we handle all family cases that I told you about. We handle all the criminal cases that have been bound over. We do specialized business docket cases. So if one business is suing another business, we handle the probate cases as well. That's in probate court, but still separate from district court. Guardianships, wills and estates and trusts and things like that. We do PPOs, as I said before, we do adoptions. And so all of that and everything over $25,000, any disputes that are like that. So the really interesting part is that when you have a decision that's made at the district court level, in most cases, those are appealed up to the circuit court, so up to our court. And then we get to decide whether or not the district court judge, looking at the law and the facts, has made a mistake or has done it correctly. At the circuit court level, our review is done by the Court of Appeals. So if somebody doesn't like what I do, somebody doesn't like what one of the other judges do, then they appeal up to the Court of Appeals. You have an appeal as of right. If I terminate somebody's parental rights, for example, or enter a divorce judgment they don't like, or you have an application for leave to appeal, which means, yeah, I entered a guilty plea, but guess what? I think something was wrong, so I'm going to ask the Court of Appeals to review it. So there's 2 different ways to get up there. And then for the Supreme Court, it's more complicated, but you kind of have to ask them permission to look at this case after we've looked at it, the Court of Appeals has looked at it. There's a bit of a difference there, but I think my wealth of experience and even all the experience that I had in private practice doing civil cases will also make me I think, more informed, better informed, and the choice for the Court of Appeals this November 8th.
And again, that map, geographically, it is huge, but we're voting from Mason County all the way into Washtenaw, down over by Berrien. So we'll put that map up so people can see, because it's a unique geographical area. What do you call it? You have a nickname for it.
My lady's high-heeled boot.
I love it. That's fantastic. I'm so glad we were able to do this. Is there anything else you think people should know or you want to share?
Well, I just want people to be informed when they're making their decisions. Like I said before, talk to people, check out our websites. Mine can be found at feeney4coa.com. Do your homework before you vote. I tell people all the time that presidents and governors come and go, but the people that get placed on the judiciary are typically there for a very long time. So let's make sure everybody makes informed decisions this November.
All right. Well, we're so proud of you. You are amazing. I'm
You're
glad
wonderful.
you're able to share just a little bit of that today. But give the family my love.
I will, and big hugs to Henry. He is so adorable.
Thanks.
I just want to go there and like squeeze his little cheeks.
He's a cutie, right?
He is adorable. Oh, he's just precious. So thanks so much, Anne Marie. I really appreciate it.
Bye.